everybody, it's Helen Hillix, your host for From My Heart to Yours and my YouTube channel, Helen Hillix. And I am excited today to talk to you about a topic that came up at a retreat that I attended this past weekend with Beth Green. And at the end of it, everybody was asking, who would you have been if you had had all your needs met as a child? So that's what I want to talk to you about today, is reclaiming your potential, reclaiming your life, reclaiming your soul by really addressing what needs didn't get met and who you would be if you had gotten them all met, and claiming your right to be that person now. So we're going to talk about 4 steps. What did you lack? What was the impact of that on your life? Who would you be if you had had all those needs met? And then claiming to the universe that you are claiming the right to be that person that did get all their needs met now. So let's talk about each one of those 4 steps in depth. The first one is really, really important, not as a way of blaming your parents or blaming society or blaming your teachers or any of that. That's not where I'm going with it. It's about identifying, really clearly identifying what needs did not get met in your childhood. And I'll just use myself as an example because it might be helpful. I came from a family of very young parents. They were 25 and had 6 children. And they were both graduate students. So you can imagine how busy everything was. And because of that, through no fault of their own, they weren't bad parents. They loved us all. But because of the circumstances and the situation, the kids did not get a lot of individual attention, you might say. And there was a lot of competition between the kids. There wasn't a sense of collaboration and cooperation. I ended up being very close to my sister, but there was competition. So everybody was vying to try to get their little piece of the pie. And some of them at the end, my twin sisters at the end, I think they just kind of gave up and thought, we're just going to be the babies and we'll just get the leftovers. So, it's so interesting to go back and look at what happened in your childhood and what needs did not get met. I did not feel safe. I did not feel secure. I felt there was a lot of chaos. My parents were both having their own issues, and it caused a lot of strife, and they ended up getting divorced, and there was cheating, and so I didn't feel secure. I didn't feel stable. And because I felt I had to make myself stand out in some way, I took on the role of the helper and making myself indispensable. And of course, that made me feel like I could never just be my needy, vulnerable self, because nobody would want me. I always have to be helping and making myself useful. And that has shown up all through my life, and I still struggle not to do that. So I want you to look at what you did not get. Did you not get a sense of safety? Was there sexual abuse in your childhood? Did you feel like you weren't safe inside your home in a physical way? Were you beaten? Were you abused in some other kind of way? Were you starved? Were you neglected? Were your parents addicts? Was your mother depressed and suicidal and you were afraid that, she would die? My mother tried to kill herself when I was 11, and that had a huge impact on my sense of safety and security. I couldn't rely on my mother because she might be dead any moment. So, and of course, the thought process that I had when I was 11 was not very well developed. And so my reaction to that was way more than logically it might be reasonable to have it be. But I didn't know. I was 11 years old, or I was 10 years old. So what happened to you? What did you lack? Did you lack a feeling of love? Were your parents very strict and cold? Was your mother overindulgent and your father overcritical? There are so many possibilities. And, I've been in this business for 35 years and I've literally worked with thousands of clients by now. And I have, I understand that it's a somewhat skewed population, if you will, in terms of research, but I don't think it really is atypical of the whole population. I think that people who come to therapy are really no different than people who don't. So I think that in general, human consciousness is at the state where nobody really got all their needs met as children. So don't feel badly that you're putting your parents down. They were just doing the best they could, and they were just being human beings. I mean, I didn't meet all my daughter's needs either, trust me. And I didn't meet my stepson's, all of his needs. So I'm not trying to say that anybody's better than anybody else or that anybody should be blamed. It's just a matter of exploring. And let's explore what happened to you as a child. Let yourself really take a look at that. What was your experience at school? Did you have some kind of a learning disability that made you feel stupid? And how did the teachers treat you? Were the teachers overwhelmed with 30 kids in the class and they were impatient and you were a slow learner? So looking at every aspect of your childhood and see where you did not get your needs met. Were you a very active child and it would have been great for you to be involved in sports, but your parents both worked and you didn't get to be involved in sports? And therefore that way where you might have felt really powerful and successful was stifled. Again, no fault of their own, but it just wasn't able to happen. So let yourself just be free to explore all the different ways that your needs did not get met. What was going on in the culture where you grew up? Did you grow up in a country where there was revolution happening or political chaos or financial depression? What was happening there? That also has a tremendous impact on children. Can you imagine growing up in the culture when the Holocaust was going on? And how are the children that are growing up right now with all of the racial unrest in the US and around the globe it has spread? How is that impacting children? How are the African American children growing up feeling? I watched a TikTok video on a presentation my daughter had to do for a class in which the young Black man was saying, these are the things that my mother has told me to do and not to do. Don't put your hoodie up. Don't drive with a do-rag. If you ever get stopped, put your hands on the dashboard and don't fight or talk back. Never have your shirt off. Be sure you're in touch with people and everybody knows where you are. I mean, and on and on and on it went. So there is such a sense of unsafety in young African-American children and young African-American people and old African-American people for that matter. But in this conversation, we're looking at what did you lack? What needs did not get met as a child? And that need for safety is so deep and so many people did not get it. So what was going on in the culture? What was going on in your religious upbringing? Did you have a religious upbringing? If you didn't, you may lack that sense that there is something greater than myself that I can rely on, that I can turn to for guidance. And if you did, was it a punitive, vengeful kind of religion, or was it a nurturing, liberal, open-minded kind of religion? All those different options have a tremendous impact on the way you feel about yourself and on the way you feel about life in general. And that's, there are so many levels to what we needed and didn't get. One of them is on that universal cosmic level. What did you learn about the paradigm of life itself? What is the underlying force that drives us all? Is it evolution? Is it shame and punishment? What were you taught at that level, and then politically and racially and in your family and in your community? What were you taught about sex? What were you taught about your body? My dad was always athletic and always working out and playing tennis and very, very active. And he is like, all my life, I'm almost 71 years old, and he's always, every time I see him, he's 93 now, he's still talking about, whether you're fat or you're not fat. So it's like, what were you taught about that? Where did you get your ideas about body image and health and your looks? What were you taught about how you looked? Were you taught that you were beautiful? Were you taught that you were not beautiful enough? And on it goes. And I think the fact that I'm diving into this so thoroughly is giving you an idea of how complex it is, how complex our needs are, and how many of them did not get met. So that's the first step, is to really take a thorough look at what needs did get met and what needs didn't get met inside you. And of course, I don't mean that none of your needs got met. You wouldn't be listening to this podcast or watching this video if none of your needs had gotten met. You'd be dead in the first place. But you wouldn't be that kind of functioning person that is seeking more information and more healing by looking up this kind of work. So I want to give you that credit that you have already probably done a ton of work on yourself, and some of this may be completely redundant. However, it's a really interesting exploration. So the second step is, what was the impact of those needs not being met? How did it shape who you became? And again, I'll use myself as an example. It made me insecure. I was good at school. I was attractive. I knew that I was loved, but I still felt very insecure. I did not have good standards when it came to boyfriends or husbands, for that matter. I did not feel confident about myself and my value. And I didn't feel safe in the world. I felt like I had to go out and prove my value to the world. And, I did that with sexuality. I did that with work. I did that with being helpful, but I didn't feel relaxed in the world. I didn't feel safe to explore things. I did not, from my perspective, I did not reach the potential of all the gifts that I had. I did not explore things that I wasn't sure I could do well immediately, like artistically. My mother was a painting professor, and it's like I never have felt like I could live up to that, because I couldn't just do whatever with art. It had to look a certain way or be a certain way or meet certain standards. So, that's some of the ways that my childhood has impacted me. I could go on and on for a very long time about all that I've learned about how I was impacted, but it would be boring probably. So I want you to be able to really take that in and spend the time you need for your own exploration of how your childhood impacted you. It may have made you defensive because your father criticized you all the time. I had a session tonight where that was the case, that the guy realized that his dad would actually say, if I wanted to hear your opinion, I would tell you what it is. And so it's like he could see how he adapted that, because he didn't the need to express himself and to be heard and to be validated as valuable, even as a child, was absolutely not met. And so he has the choice as a grown-up. He sees that he's either going to be helpless and not listened to, or he's going to be the dominating dad that's critical and says, I don't want to hear what you have to say. And so is that you? Is that one of the ways that you have developed as a response to your childhood? Or are you meek and mousy because that's what you were taught that a woman's job is to be submissive and pleasing her husband? Have you shut down your sexuality because you were taught in your religion that women are not supposed to have sexual feelings? That's for the men to have, and you just meet those needs as your duty. So there are so many ways. Did you learn to be cocky and arrogant because you were spoiled as a child to cover up the fact that you actually feel insecure? So we could go on and on about this too, couldn't we? But I want you to take some time after you listen to this and really ask yourself, what was the impact of the childhood that you did have? How is it showing up in your life? And the next question, number 3, is who would you be if you had your needs met? And that has been a fascinating journey for me to see that, and for me, again, just very briefly, I can see that I would be relaxed. I wouldn't be anxious. I wouldn't have spent a lifetime being anxious. I would be relaxed. I would trust that who I am is a valuable presence in the world, that it's a blessing to the world because the universe made me as I am. I would know that I have nothing to prove. I would trust myself and my gifts more, and I would allow myself to explore things and to give all aspects of myself, my vulnerability, for instance, to show my vulnerability, to allow myself to feel that it's okay to be old, to be growing in that way, in a different way, not to have to try to be young or feel young or whatever, but that I can be old because I am. So if I had all of my needs met, I think the bottom line for me is that I would have had parents who made me feel safe, and then I would have felt safe in the world, and I would have just been able to flow and relax in the world so much more. And I think many of you can probably relate to that, but I'd like you again to really take your time and make that connection between how the deficits impacted who you are and how you would be if you had not had those deficits in your upbringing. And then this last part is, I want you to make a statement at the end of this exploration. I want you to make a statement. I, James Garner, had parents who loved me, who supported me, who were nurturing and kind and encouraging, who encouraged me to make mistakes, who encouraged me to try new things, even if I wasn't good at them. That's the kind of parents I had. And let yourself feel the filling up of that proclamation of the redo. That's what you're really doing here, isn't it? You're redoing your life and saying that your parents did provide you with the things that you needed. And I had teachers who were patient with me and who energized my strengths and helped me to learn to cope with and manage my vulnerabilities in school. I had a society that wanted to make sure everyone felt safe. I grew up in a society that wanted everyone to feel safe. And so I did feel safe, and I felt cared about, that the society cared about me, that the government cared about me, not just my family, that the community cared about me. And therefore, I do feel safe and nurtured, and I feel the generosity of the world. I feel like there's never a scarcity because the world is generous. And I didn't mention that earlier, but I think that's a very prevalent feeling that people have is that the world is not generous, and that there is a tremendous amount of scarcity, and that everybody's fighting for limited resources, rather than that everybody is cared about and there is a generosity in the world and an abundance enough to meet everyone's needs. So that needs to be part of your proclamation at the end, is claiming that I grew up in a society that was generous and caring about social justice and equality for all and everybody getting their needs met. So I felt safe to be myself, and I felt supported to fulfill all of my potential. And to say, and because of that, because I got all of these things that you're going to list, I am a person who launched into life with a feeling of safety and support and encouragement and excitement of all I could be and all I could see and all I could offer. Because when you feel that you got your needs met, you end up being the kind of person that wants to offer everything you can to the world. Because the world and the universe and your family and the community have been generous to you, and you want to let that generosity just flow through you and back out to the world. So make that kind of proclamation and feel how your energy shifts. I know it will. I know it will shift. And after you've done that, I forgot to add this step, but I want to add this now. Step 5 is be that person in the world. Be that person in the world. Be that generous person in the world. Be that person who exudes self-love and a feeling of safety and confidence. And you know what? Provide that for the people around you. Provide that for your children. Provide that for your spouse. Provide that for your community at work. Be that person that wants to help co-create a world in which everyone feels their needs can be met, in which everyone feels encouraged and entitled to reach their potential and to claim the soul that is meant to be expressed in their lives. And you will be even more of a blessing than you already are if you do this. And I would so dearly love to hear from you if you do this exercise, and to hear what impact doing this exercise has on your lives. And I love you so much, and I will talk to you next week. Bye for now.